Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Spectrum podcast, right from Bloom Garden Schools.
Sensory processing disorders most of the time are categorized into three. We have what we'd call sensory modulation disorders, then we actually have sensory-based motor disorders, and we'd have what we call the sensory discrimination disorders.
Okay, probably we're talking about the usual ones, the visual, the hearing, the tactile, which is the sense of touch. Hello everyone and welcome back to Beyond the Spectrum podcast, right from Bloom Garden Schools. Today we are diving into a very interesting topic on sensory processing disorders. And with me here I have an amazing team that is going to be helping us to expound more on this topic. I will let them introduce themselves from the right.
Thank you so much, Dorcas. Hello everyone, my name is Ronald Nyawade. I'm an occupational therapist by profession, and I'm actually glad to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Mutua. I'm a special educator based at Bloom Garden Schools. It's amazing to be here.
Mercy.
Hello everyone, my name is Mercy Mule, a special needs educator here at Bloom Garden Schools. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome all to the panel. I would like you all to be free as we dive into this topic so that we may be able to expound as much as we can on it. So I would like, as most of our viewers may not know what, when we talk of sensory processing, what we mean by that. So maybe Ronald, you can tell us, what do we mean by sensory processing disorders?
Wow, thanks so much, Dorcas, for that. Yeah, right into the question. Sensory processing is, how I would put it in a layman's language, the ability to somehow integrate and process information from the external environment. We are natural beings who pick information from our various senses that we know, whether it is tactile, it is auditory, it is visual, proprioception, name them, all of those. We pick this information every day from the environment that we live in. So the ability to integrate and process that information is now what we are calling sensory processing in this perspective.
Yes. And at what point do we say that there's a disorder, Mr. Michael?
Well, we usually say there is a sensory processing disorder or dysfunction when the child is not able to perceive, for instance, the sensations they're getting from the environment correctly. So, and that's where now the aspect of processing comes in. And I'll give a very an example from now an educator's perspective.
Yeah.
There's something called language processing. Language processing is, let's say Ronald is trying to tell me something. When he's trying to tell me something, these stimulations or stimuli from the environment has to come to my brain.
Yes.
Then it has to be processed in order for me to respond appropriately based on the question he's asking me. But now, if there is a processing disorder, or my brain is not able to process the information or I'm receiving from him, then it means my response will not correspond with the input I'm getting from him. Sure. So there is a disconnect when it comes to information coming to my brain and it getting out, which is revealed through my responses. Another example is maybe I'm outside and perhaps it's very hot or it's very cold. Let's say it's very hot, and my brain is not able to process that information correctly, and as a result, when it is very hot, what I'm supposed to do is maybe sit under the shade or something like that. But if that is not being seen, if my reactions do not tally or match with the sensations I'm getting from the environment, then we say there is a dysfunction.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mwalimu. So I was thinking when he's talking about us receiving sensations from the environment, and we have not really talked about the senses. So maybe Matthew can expound on us for our viewers to know what senses are we exactly talking about here.
Okay, probably we are talking about the usual ones, the visual, the hearing, the tactile, which is the sense of touch. Yeah.
Smell.
Yes.
Yes. Uh-huh. We
Yeah,
also have the vestibular and the proprioception. Yeah, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I know many a times people measure on the ones we know.
Yeah, just the basic five
They are
senses.
always more than that.
Yeah.
I know nowadays people have been able to add more to proprioception and vestibular systems.
Yeah.
There are also some other which we may not go into much of that, but those are the basics we're able to understand.
Okay. Yeah. So when he was talking, he mentioned something about not being able to perceive the reactions. Did you call the reactions? Like what you get maybe from the response.
So the stimulus and response have kind of agree.
Yeah.
Yes. The stimuli from the environment and my response.
Yeah.
Yes. So now when we are talking about the agreement of the stimuli and the response, there comes the aspect of sensory modulation disorders, where we have the sensory over-responsivity or hyposensitivity, where the individual is not able to feel, right? So maybe we can expound more on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ronald.
I think when Mwalimu was also sharing, I got to just get a lot of whatever he was saying, because that is entirely what comes into play as far as sensory processing disorders are concerned. If I would be able to start from a point where sensory processing disorders most of the time are categorized into three. We have what we'd call sensory modulation disorders. Then we actually have sensory-based motor disorders, and would have what we call the sensory discrimination disorders. So whatever Mwalimu was just describing here, for instance, a child is outside and they are unable to distinguish between whether it is cold or hot. That is a classical example of a sensory discrimination disorder, in that when you look at the characteristic of the stimuli or the sensory stimuli that is in play, they are unable to know what this categorically is. And that would play a big role in a number of other things. They are unable to differentiate between the different temperatures. They are unable to differentiate between the weight of something. Probably a child comes here, they need to lift a tire. But the effort they are using to be able to lift the tire is actually not the appropriate one. So they either fall. The other one, which we call the sensory-based motor disorders, would have manifestations of postural disorders, what also we would call dyspraxia, movement issues, and then being able to organize their movements also in space and what have you. One of which is so common and quite a major one is the one we call the sensory modulation disorders. And that is why this is where you'd hear people say, my child is over responsive. This is where people would start calling some children hyperactive kids, or a child is very under responsive when a stimuli is presented. A good example also would be that we are in a room and we are listening to loud music. For instance, there's loud music and a child walks in and somehow they have some sensory modulation issues. So what happens when they get in, there's loud music, a hyper-responsive child, in this case, would close their ears, or would want to jack out of the room and just go away, because that is so much for them to be able to process and integrate. So that would be a presentation. The other side of a hyper-responsive child would be that looks like everything is normal for them. They actually get in here and they are going on with their businesses. And that is a danger, which in most cases we really have to to really take care. I know these are things we have seen.
Sure,
Yes.
We have witnessed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he left something, the sensory seeking or craving, where we witness, maybe some parents have had this in their homes, and they want to know, is this really sensory seeking, or is it a behavior that is manifesting, so they can know how to go about it. Where maybe you find a kid is jumping all over, clapping their hands, rocking. Yeah, maybe we can expound more on that, Mwalimu.
Yes, so there's I remember reading a particular article, and it was talking about sensory regulation and sensory processing, and why it is very important for nearly everyone to have some information in regards to that. And they were saying every person in one way or another tends to have sensory seeking habits. Someone can just be sitting without knowing, you find someone just like shaking their leg or something like that. Or maybe you're somewhere, you look like you're daydreaming, and you're chewing maybe the top of your pen or something like that. Or you're just those kind of habits. Now for kids, for certain kids, and especially those who are on the autism spectrum, this is usually over-amplified. It is usually over-amplified. And now the article I'm referring to, they were saying some of our kids, and especially the ones who are autistic, the ones who are on the autism spectrum, there's a reason as to why they always want to be on their feet, running and jumping and all that, because it is through doing this that they are able to actually kind of feel their bodies. Sometimes you look at them in class, they're not very sure of where their bodies are in relation to space, in relation to other people, in relation to all that is happening around them. And because that feeling causes anxiety in them, they want to be on their feet so that they can feed this, how they're feeling inside them. And sometimes we confuse this for behavior. And sometimes we kind of try to force them to maybe learn in a particular way. Sometimes we try to force them to sit in class in a particular way, the way we know like a typically developing child ought to sit. And as we do all this, we ignore that these kids have certain sensory issues that cannot actually allow them to kind of behave and act as typically developing kids. So as far as now the whole of these things, sensory processing dysfunctions are concerned, every person, be it a parent, be it an occupational therapist, be it a teacher, we need to understand it and appreciate it, so that we can now be able to understand all the behaviors that we see in our children.
Yeah, sure. Very, very informative.
I think doctors, if I can just say something, when Mwalimu was sharing, I got the reality of it all. Because truth be told is many times we attach sensory processing issues, Mwalimu, with autism, but clearly these are things that happen. There are people who have sensory processing issues and they do not have autism here and there. But whatever he said is actually real, that in most cases it's a bit amplified. And some of those things restrict them from being able to have a productive day or to be able to engage in the things they would love to in a better, I think I can put it well better than whatever he
and
said.
Again, you see, it's actually usually a normal thing. Because think about it. I remember reading, there's a guy called Paul Dennison, the guy who created the protocol we call brain gym, and he says something very important. He says it is the senses that educate the brain, not the brain educating the senses.
Absolutely.
So all the learning, all the information, everything that is in the brain came through the senses. So the senses have to do what senses need to do, so that actually the brain can have information. Ideally and typically, when you put kids in certain environments, and I'm sure you've seen this, like you bring kids to a room like this that has a very beautiful mat. Naturally, what will happen is that they will want to roll, because it is their senses asking for that. When you take some kids to a place that has sand, maybe at the beach, and it's not only kids, even adults, what they will want to do is touch it and roll it and roll there and feel it,
Mhm.
because it is a sensory seeking habit that is in each and every individual.
Yeah.
But now for certain kids and kids that have sensory processing dysfunctions, this is usually over.
Sure.
And you find them seeking certain sensations more than their peers who don't have these dysregulations.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mwalimu and Ronald. So now, being an institution that deals majorly with autism, can we talk about the common challenges that we have faced, or rather seen them face with sensory processing issues? Mercy, maybe you could start us off.
Yeah, so one of the challenges that probably I've experienced is one, as you said, that is caused through the sense of hearing, that is through the ears, in a way that you find a child will just want to listen to more volume. If they find, for example, if they come to a room and they find that you guys have a certain kind of volume, or maybe they're watching the TV and they have some certain volume, they will want to even add more volume, or even some, those who maybe will use a tablet, you'll find that they will prefer minimizing the whole volume, just so that they don't want to listen to any volume, which to them may seem like it's a distraction to them, it's a bother to them. Yeah.
Thank you, Mercy.
Those are kids who, again, adding to what Mwalimu has said, you get a child, it's cocoa melon.
Yeah.
Every time it's cocoa melon. They're repeating cocoa melon, and they are increasing the volume as much as they can. Some other people would call it auditory steaming. In some kind of way, they want to get that information again and again. They want to do it again and again. The other example I would give is those of our kids who would engage in some kind of behavior where you would see them steaming with their hands. So he gets my pen here. The first thing he does is to take my pen and start steaming with it. And that can't be explained way further than just as Mwalimu had said. There is just something, there's just a feeling of some nice feeling that he gets when he's steaming, that makes him to feel like this is now the actual me. Yes. Clearly, the point is there is a sense they are seeking. There's a sense they are craving, that they are seeking to be able to find as well. The same thing, I know some parents are always disturbed by a child who, you see a child is coming closer to you and they have smelled some nice perfume. So they want to come so close to you. They are seeking that, and you're like, what is happening with this boy, or what is happening with this girl? Because they are everywhere. They want to feel it so that they can feed themselves with it and feel okay. I know the vice versa is actually true, that there are also kids who they would not recognize that there is actually any sense of smell here. They actually not notice that there is any perfume here. And those are the ones we are saying they fall under this other category of under responsiveness, or they are quite hypo with their reaction as well. So I think that explains it as some of the examples. Maybe if you have something to add, Mwalimu.
Yes, so we see it a lot, especially in a setting, in special education settings.
Yes.
Like kids who want to, they're always climbing.
Yes.
They're either climbing on the windows, on top of the desk, on top of the chair, and once they are on those high heights, the next thing that they do is jump.
They want to jump.
They want to jump.
Yes.
Sometimes usually say they don't have the awareness of danger. Of course they don't, but again, it is a sensory seeking habit.
Yes.
A sensory seeking habit. Or you come across another lot who. So we are in class, the session is running, and they look so disturbed, not knowing that there's maybe a bird that is singing somewhere outside, or maybe something like a cricket, or just a sound that seems to irritate them. And because of, and I'm sure Ronald can advise us more and better, because of the
responsivity.
They can pick frequencies, sound frequencies that now you or myself are not able to speak.
True.
And as a result of that, they look distracted.
Yes.
They look very distracted.
Yes.
So if you're not aware of such kind of issues, or the fact that this child has such an issue, you may be there as a teacher forcing them to kind of pay attention. Like, look, listen, you're talking to you and you're not responding. You may even think they are rude.
Oh, yes.
And essentially, it's not because they're not able to pay attention or something, but there's something that is in the environment that is disturbing them.
That is very
And
true.
because of that, they look totally distracted and sometimes totally lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Actually, yeah, if I can say, another kind of sensory seeking that you find in some of the kids that maybe I've witnessed, those who really never want to walk, for them running is the kind of moment they feel like they want, they seek to do every time.
And the other lot are tiptoes.
Yeah, the lot of pictures. Yeah, because I know that is also an example, Mwalimu, where kids would do that to seek some kind of sense, but as well also the other side that we just want to be sure that it is not they're doing that because of a sensory overload issue, because also that is always an explanation for the same. I don't know if you have interacted also with kids who they love it when they are rocking on the chair, and you wonder, what is happening to this one?
And you're there, stop doing that.
Can you stop doing it? I feel these are real ideal things that people need to understand as far as sensory processing is concerned. Because that is the message you are trying to spread, Mwalimu, out here. Because somebody would in turn take them and can them because they are not hearing what they are saying.
Absolutely. And though this has not been asked, but there's also another dimension into all these. Now, autism comes with, different manifestations. There's the child who will rock, another child who likes screaming, another one is steaming in a particular way, another one likes to climb. And there are times when some people fear, if I put my child in such an environment, maybe my child who was not rocking might pick that habit and start rocking. Or my child who was not climbing on the windows will start climbing, or will pick certain sounds and start screaming and all that. And now this is where now the sensory processing issue comes in. Because every child who has a sensory dysfunction has a dysfunction that is particular to them.
Of their own way.
And it serves a certain internal urge and a certain internal need.
Yeah.
If maybe my sensory needs are not the same as your sensory needs, there's no way I'm going to pick your sensory seeking habit and make them mine. Yeah. So that now the child who likes flapping cannot actually spread that to another child whose sensory seeking habit is jumping. True. Because the needs of this child are not
totally different from the other
one.
That has been something. We have had to answer those questions a lot.
And I think what Mwalimu is saying, maybe these parents are interpreting this as behaviors. When they see a kid maybe flapping their hands, and that's why they are worried that their kid may pick up the behavior. So maybe we can tell, we can educate our viewers, how do these sensory processing issues manifest in behaviors?
Well, they say again, if I'm able to get back to autism, because that is what we specialize in, and that is what we do, plus a number of other conditions, yes. But just to say that it's good to understand that behavior is behavior. There's always that, and I know many times we'd say that some behaviors are a form of communication. That is why we say it is quite important to understand that when there is a sensory processing issue that is manifesting in what you're calling a behavior, then it is important for you to be able to understand from that perspective that this behavior is manifesting as a result of A, B, C, and D. And we respond to behaviors anyway. If I come here and I get agitated, I would definitely walk away. You see, I would walk away. So it is you to learn that I walked away because I wasn't happy. Absolutely. The same thing applies to sensory processing issues. Am I manifesting a certain behavior? For instance, I am here, I want something, and you're not giving. So I throw a tantrum. So for you, you call that my behavior. In total, this child is so rude. There's no way I would deny them this, and they are jumping up and doing all those kinds of tantrums. It's a behavior in its own way. So understanding the root cause of what is it being communicated, that then we are able to come up with a solution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe if I actually may add on what Ronald said, it is usually can be very confusing, and the line actually can be very thin.
Yes.
Because sometimes not being able to tell if a behavior is or is a sensory issue.
Oh yes.
If something is sensory in nature, or it's a behavior, it's behavioral in nature.
Yes.
And I think, just like you said, the differentiator is this, that when something is sensory, like you said in the beginning, it all has to do with the way the brain is processing information. Okay? On this other side, behavior is more of a psychological construct.
Yes.
So, and this is an example. So some kids are known to be manipulative because it serves a certain purpose.
True.
Especially, e.g., task avoidance.
Yes.
So they avoid the task, not because it is sensory.
Yes.
Not because they have a sensory dysfunction, but when they avoid these, by not wanting to do a particular task, they avoid all the hassle that comes with this task.
Yeah.
So we can therefore say this task avoidance or running away from tasks may not be as a result of sensory processing issues, but the child decides intentional.
Yeah.
They're a bit intentional that, oh, you want us to go back to class instead of us playing outside. I want to play outside. So it is a bit intentional that they want to play outside and not go back to class. So the reason as to why they want to stay outside is not because it is sensory, it is because of this, it's a behavior. Something psychological.
Yes.
Psychological versus how the brain is actually processing and interpreting information. And now when it comes to the the sensory, it is usually beyond a child.
Yeah.
It is beyond them because it is kind of this overload. Something takes over them, and they're not in control. But in terms of behavior, they are the boss. They're in control. It reminds me of the movie Boss Baby.
Yeah. Yes.
Like a very small boy there. And he decides, and even influences other little humans, that we are not going to obey rules. We are going to break all the rules, because in so doing, in breaking the rules, there's some comfort that they get. Hence now the variation between behavior and a sensory disorder.
Dorcas, let me just add to whatever Mwalimu has said, because that paints a very brilliant picture of what you're talking about. And I think whatever he just explained in the latter would go to extent of thinking about it from a meltdown perspective. When a child gets into a meltdown, it is almost 100% sure that there's a sensory issue that is actually associated here. Many times tantrums, as he said, tantrums can be so manipulative. A child knows, I will do this and this, and you will have to buy. And that is why we are always very keen to let people know that when a tantrum is actually thrown by a child, you really need to know when you need to prevent that behavior from cropping up and continuing, and when you need to at least get the child to understand what is actually expected them to be able to do, because they can really use it as a platform. They know, if I do this, the teacher is going to leave me. If I don't want to work from class and I throw noises and they take me out, well and good, that is going to be it. So I know when he was speaking, I got the aspect of the intentional perspective, where a child can intentionally just try to manipulate you. It also takes intentional us to understand, is this genuine? Is this a way of trying to manipulate, or what exactly is presenting here?
You really need to know what is happening.
Yes.
And therefore, I think we should also be able to, with that information, we could be able to see how these individuals are affected by these sensory processing issues, right? So maybe we could expand on that. I think we see a lot of it, especially from where we are here in our institution. Like, how do these sensory processing issues affect their daily lives?
Okay, so for example, you could find that maybe a child has an issue with either dressing that is tactile. You find that probably there's some kind of fabric to them. They can't like let it be on their bodies. So you find that sometimes you may wonder why a child is trying to maybe pull out some clothes, and for real, they really don't want to have it to them until you realize it is not working. It's not working to their benefit. That's why they decide to like pull it out to them. As well, it can come in terms of either food. You find that they really get to choose most of the food that they get to eat. Some are very, really sensitive taste buds unto them that they get to choose different kind of foods that they really want to eat, or what they wouldn't want to have into their mouths,
And that becomes difficult for the parents or
to even
is around them,
to even understand. You really have to understand exactly why they are either denying to have this or they really want to have the same thing throughout.
Maybe Ronald, you can expand on this, what you talked about, and tell us, what do we feel like in the afterlife, like after they become adults? Do the sensory processing issues continue manifesting, and do they also affect their daily lives?
Yeah, I think adding on, before I go into that, adding on just what Mercy has shared, you can imagine an environment, a classroom environment where it is a bit noisy, and we are here having a child who is unable to process that kind of stimuli, or it is so lit or brightly colored with various objects, and maybe they're unable to process that. You see, it would make it difficult for them to thrive in that learning environment. So it becomes a bit difficult as well. But we advocate, there's a lot of research nowadays, and that is why we recommend that we can make a step and get to know what can be done as far as these sensory processing issues are concerned. We can speak with, if I was to say conviction as a word, with a lot of conviction that it works out when we are able to expose our children to some kind of sensory integration therapies. One thing that we really strongly stand and advocate for, even as an institution here, because when we are able to expose our children to the various kinds of sensory inputs that they so require to enable them to be able to function appropriately in their class environments. At the end of the day, that is what we want for them. We want them to be able to learn. And it has been seen throughout history that a child whose the intervention has started when they are a bit younger and you're able to integrate the sensory integration where they are processing deficits, they have come out to be quite productive. And in the long run, majority of them do not manifest with a number of these things that would disturb them in their initial stages as well. So it is good to have them exposed. We advocate for sensory integration. We advocate for treatment or intervention, if I'm able to use that word, as far as sensory integration is concerned. So that I get a child and expose them to the necessary tactile textures that they require. Are they needing of auditory stimuli? I'm able to expose them to that in a form of input that is actually regulated. You see, because the point is regulation in the long run. Is he demanding of a lot of the input? I give it to them with regulation and modulation. Is he too or hyper? Is having a lot? Again, the modulation with the decrease, so that they're able to function in the environment. I think that would be the most basic way to put it out. But there is something that can actually be done. Maybe Mwalimu, you have something to add.
Just a bit on what Mercy said and what you said. Remember, the question was about how sensory processing disorders affect their daily lives. And Mercy gave a very, very practical example of kids who are not able to tolerate certain foods or certain smells. And what that does in the long run is you find a child who's so limited in regards to what they can eat. Maybe all they want to eat is crunchy food. crisps, popcorn. If it is maybe something like fruits, they can only eat something like an apple if if their senses allow them. When it comes to vegetables and certain other fruits, they're not able to tolerate those, and in the long run, that affects even their. It can lead to certain deficiencies in their bodies because there's so much they're not able to eat because their senses do not allow them. Therefore, it can actually lead to certain health issues. And also think about life. Life is all about experiences.
Sure.
But now, if a child is not able to endure certain experiences, it means then they are not having a complete childhood. They may actually, the quality of life is also affected. Maybe a child is not able to tolerate loud noises, loud music, so there are places they cannot go. Or maybe certain smells, it means there are certain places they cannot go. So it means they're limited in actually the places they can access the quality of life. The fact or the question about manifestations of sensory processing disorders once people are older and all that, when we become older, we can mask.
Sure.
If I have a dysfunction, I can actually mask, be here and act as though everything is okay. But essentially, I'm suffering inside. And when I get to the house, that is when I would like
erupts.
It erupts. It erupts. So older people, you may not see a lot of it, but because again there's the masking aspect. But again, I think it is something that is always there.
Yes.
It is always there. But like Ron said, we can actually work on it. So that we can help these individuals to cope.
Sure.
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. Sensory processing disorders are a very deep topic. It's a very deep topic, and we cannot exhaust it in one sitting, right? Yeah. But I think today we have got some very informative information. You could be able to differentiate between meltdowns and tantrums. Do not just assume that a kid is throwing a tantrum when maybe they could be suffering from inside. So keep staying with us in the next episode as we continue to expound more on sensory processing disorders. Thank you very much for staying with us throughout the sitting when we discussed sensory processing disorders. We hope to see you in the next episode. We are here at Bloom Garden Schools along Mutangari Road in Lavington. Please like, subscribe and share with your friends so that we may keep growing and educating everyone around us about majorly autism and all these sensory processing disorders, among other many topics that we're going to be going through. Thank you.